The focus is on psychedelics and the quest for life after death. Is is there something in this quest that sheds new light on history and prehistory? Um, there's a tendency for Western science, which is very materialist-reductionist, to eliminate all kinds of areas from inquiry. In archaeology, hi Greg. In archaeology, fantastic. Look at that. I got a pointer. In archaeology, that leads to largely a complete ignoring of myths and traditions because you can't weigh and measure and count them. And as a result, I think archaeology is impoverished by its failure to take into account traditional tales and stories from the regions that are studied. And another area that has been neglected from our investigation of the past is psychedelics. Now, ayahuasca. My first experience with ayahuasca was in 2003. I've since then had, I guess, about 75 other journeys with ayahuasca. I want to make clear at the outset, and I'm sure many of you know this, ayahuasca is not a magic pill to enlightenment. The real work comes after the journey, when you try to integrate the lessons that you've learned into your life. And since we are all frail and fragile human beings, it's very often the case that we don't integrate those lessons into our lives. And I speak from personal experience because I've been shown a lot that I need to fix under ayahuasca, and I fixed it, but then I relapsed. And so the message is the work begins after the journey, not in the journey itself. These are two paintings by Pablo Amaringo. He was an ayahuasca shaman in Peru, brilliant artist, and depicts something of the ayahuasca realm. And this is by Alex Gray on the left and by the late Robert Venosa on the right. Again, just sort of indicating the sacred and magical and enchanted realm into which ayahuasca can usher us. Certainly in the West, not entirely in the Amazon. Sometimes the spirit of ayahuasca is seen as male in the Amazon. But certainly in the West, we are meeting this extraordinary entity in feminine form. And we often speak of her as Mother Ayahuasca. And she's a healer and a moral teacher. And I just want to pay tribute and say thank you to my wonderful wife, Santa Faya, who's my moral teacher. And I couldn't have done anything that I've done in this life if I hadn't spent the last 33 years with Santa. Thank you. And Santa and I took a decision when we became a couple that we would always travel together, and that if we couldn't travel together, we wouldn't make the journey. So every journey that we've made together. And Santa's a great photographer, and majority of the photographs that I'm going to show are taken by Santa. So Martina Hoffman's painting at the top there, some of the many manifestations of Mother Ayahuasca, and I can't help seeing a similarity with the goddess Isis. This is in the temple of Seti I at Abydos in Upper Egypt, and she's feeding Ankh, immortal life, to the pharaoh Seti I. And the thing about Egypt is that for 3,000 years they put their best minds to work on the mystery of death. Now, when we're in our 20s, we don't think much about the mystery of death, but when you reach the grand old age of 72, coming on 73, it's hard to avoid it, considering what happens next. I regard it as the next great adventure. I think that's what death is. I don't think it's the end. I don't think our consciousness dies with the physical body. I don't think it's limited to the physical body. I think it's an incarnation, and we're here to learn and grow and to develop. ayahuasca means the vine of souls or the vine of the dead. It's actually a Quechua word from the Inca culture. And there are similarities to the near-death experience in the ayahuasca journey. And we're also frequently compelled to confront and question our own behavior during life. And this has certainly been the case with me. And as I say, the failing is, do I then implement the lessons that I've learned? And that's a harder journey, but I'm doing my best. This issue of questioning our behavior during life is also raised by the ancient Egyptians. This is from one of the tombs on the west bank at the Nile at Luxor. And what we're looking at is the soul of the deceased being ushered into what is called the Hall of Ma'at, or the Judgment Hall of Osiris. This is the goddess Ma'at here, identified by this feather, which represents truth and justice and cosmic harmony. And the next part of the journey is the weighing of the soul. I'll come back to that. This entity is called the Eater of the Dead. And here is Osiris sitting here. And up here, these are the 42 negative assessors. They're going to ask you a question, each one of them. And ideally, you want to be able to answer no to that question. For example, did you murder somebody? Did you steal? Questions like that. Ideally, you should be able to answer no. But the ancient Egyptians understood that we are fragile beings, that we do make mistakes, and that our life is the opportunity to learn from our mistakes and grow and hopefully to end this journey a better person than we were when we came into it. This is the close-up on the weighing of the soul. And there's the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth and cosmic justice. And this little jar represents the heart of the deceased, the soul of the deceased. And ideally, you want the heart and the feather to balance out in the judgment. And I feel that this is what ayahuasca helps us to do in this life. And ultimately, the end of the journey, you should be able to look your own soul in the face. And yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I did some wrong. But by and large, I did good. That's kind of what you want to come through this life journey with. I don't like the title of Embedon's book, Narcotic Plants, because we're not always dealing with narcotics, but it's interesting in the level and extent that it shows that the ancient Egyptians were using consciousness-altering plants, particularly the blue water lily, Nymphaea cerulea. But here we have Nefertiti presenting opium poppy heads to her husband Akhenaten. And here, these are actually the datura flower. And of course, we know that datura is a powerful visionary substance. Traces of the liquid extract from the blue water lily were found in alabaster jars stored in Tutankhamun's tomb. It had been dissolved in wine. And that tells us for sure that it was being used as an entheogen by the ancient Egyptians. And this is from the second shrine of Tutankhamun. And what you see here is definitely a visionary experience. There's a star, and the rays from the star are descending into the third eye of these individuals. Just a closer up view of that there. Now, again, at Karnak, on the walls of the great temple of Karnak, we find an image of the tree of life. And here's the god Thoth, the god of wisdom, supposedly the inventor of writing, who is going to write the name of the pharaoh Seti I on the tree of life. And Dennis McKenna, my friend Dennis McKenna, great ethnopharmacologist, has identified this tree as Acacia nilotica, which is rich in dimethyltryptamine, in DMT. It's not an accident that it's regarded as the tree of life by the ancient Egyptians. Now, there's lots of these kind of headlines about evidence for when people started taking drugs or whatever they want to call them. This is a recent headline. People were taking drugs in Spain 3,000 years ago. Here we have, we have cave murals in Spain that show man may have used magic mushrooms 6,000 years ago. But I think the evidence is much older than that. I don't think we need to see a depiction of the visionary substance to be sure that visionary experiences were being undergone. Quite the contrary, the art itself speaks of a visionary experience, and shamanistic art, going right back into the depths of the Paleolithic, is, in my view, undoubtedly visionary art. I don't like, the majority of archaeologists take a very nuts and bolts view of this, and they want the art either to be about hunting magic, regardless of the fact that in the European caves, only just over 1% of the species depicted are actually pierced by any kind of projectile. They wanted to be about hunting magic, and then this was welcomed by archaeologists because it didn't threaten them. This was somehow about monitoring the cycles of reindeers and connecting it to the lunar month. I think it's much more complicated than that. Perhaps they did have some utilitarian effect, but the main point of these paintings is to manifest the visionary experience. I would highly recommend David Lewis Williams' work and his book, The Mind in the Cave, which is a fantastic investigation of altered states of consciousness manifested in cave and rock art around the world. And he draws attention to the specific characteristics of cave art, notably the presence of therianthrope. That's from therianthropes. That's from the Greek therion, which means wild beast, and anthropos, which means man, creatures that are part animal, part human in form. And these encounters with therianthropes are very common today under the influence of ayahuasca, and very common generally in altered states of consciousness. And this is often combined with geometry of various forms, like this curious grid between two ibexes from Lascaux Cave. So David Lewis Williams calls it the neuropsychological theory of cave art, and he's suggesting that the best one-stop explanation for almost all rock and cave art around the world is that it is a shamanistic art, and that it is remembering and depicting experiences in altered states of consciousness. Some of the oldest cave art in the world depicts therianthropes. On the right, Hollenstein-Stadel Cave in Germany, 32,000 years old, a lion man. And on the left, a sort of bison man from Fumani Cave in Italy. So the two pictures above and below are rock art from the Drakensberg in South Africa. And the picture in the left is Chauvet Cave in France. Here we see humans transforming into elands. Here we see two human forms with the heads of elands. In Chauvet Cave, we see a bison straddling a female figure. The female figure is oddly headless, but her right arm is transforming into the head of a lion. Now, needless to say, this is not something that you see in an everyday state of consciousness or when you're out hunting. This is obviously an experience in altered states of consciousness that's being depicted here. And again, the presence of the geometry in these images is very interesting. And very often in altered state of consciousness experiences, the geometry comes first and the entities follow. Just another example. So there have been interesting results from the use of hallucinogens to induce altered states of consciousness. And generally, there's a notion of stage one. You see the zigzag lines, the patterns, they begin to transform into recognizable entities. Then you go through a kind of vortex. And then on the other side, you start to meet therianthropes. And in this case, the therianthrope is a fox-headed man wearing a business suit. But apart from the clothing, I don't see any big difference with the lion man and the bison man from the cave art. These experiences have been going on through human culture for thousands and thousands of years, and we're just the latest experiencers. Closer up on Pablo's amazing art, and you can see the combination of geometry, entities, the extraordinary colors. Again here, the jaguars is just an extraordinary realm that ayahuasca takes us into. And this is Shipibo ayahuasca art, which again is very geometric in its form. From Pablo's work, multiple views of therianthropes, an alligator-headed man, a human-headed serpent, a bird-headed man. Not what you see in everyday life, but what you do routinely see under the ayahuasca journey. This amazing rock art panel that's recently been discovered in Colombia is of great interest, Serenia la Lindosa. It shows typical therianthropic figures. It shows the geometry. It, to my mind, is best explained as visionary art. And generally, in the light of this, we need to take another look at the ancient world and ask ourselves, could psychedelics have played a much greater role in the story of civilization than has hitherto been recognized? So this Toltita ceramic from Ecuador, bear in mind that cave art from Chauvet, the arm transforming into the head of a lion. Here we see the arm transforming into a serpent's head. Bird-headed figure from the Maya, Olmec stone figures. They're all representations of experiences in altered states of consciousness. Theseus slaying the Minotaur. What is the Minotaur apart from a therianthrope, a bull-headed man, a bull man wrestling with a lion from Akkad on the right? It's clear that these altered states of consciousness have been a fundamental aspect of human experience really since the beginning. And of course, all of the gods of ancient Egypt, whether we're talking about Thoth, the god of wisdom, whether we're talking about Anubis, the guide of souls, whether we're talking about the great Sphinx, they're all therianthropic figures, even this human-headed serpent here. And I remind you that Pablo Amaringo depicts human-headed serpents in his art. Soma, what was that? The suggestion of Gordon Wasson very much is that it's Amanita muscaria. This substance spoken about at great length in the Vedas. And then the Eleusinian mysteries. It's really fascinating. The great minds of the ancient world all went to Eleusis, Plato, Aristotle, Pindar, Sophocles. And there they were given a potion called the kykeon, if I pronounce it correctly. And our scholars today prefer to think that it's just some mixture of barley and water. But what they've forgotten about is what grows on the barley, Claviceps paspali. And it's very obvious that what was happening at Eleusis as they drank the potion, they went into this darkened hall, and then they had these extraordinary experiences. And those experiences led the initiates no longer to have fear of death, to understand that this was just part of the journey that they are making. This is the Pyramid of the Inscriptions at Palenque in Mexico, the tomb of Lord Pakal. Again, I resist any attempt to explain this as UFOs. It's got nothing to do with unidentified flying objects. It's got to do with the journey of the soul after death. And it should not be trivialized in any other way. Maya mushroom stones, classic Maya. This amazing Olmec head on the left, and this curious figure wrapped in a serpent on the right. These are both early Olmec art, at least 3,000 years old. And the Olmecs clearly were using Amanita muscaria, as these images show, an Olmec baby weird jaguar wearing an Amanita muscaria mushroom cap, and so on and so forth. And just more examples of the same thing. If we take a close look at history and prehistory, we are going to find psychedelics everywhere. And they've been cut out of the story by our historians and archaeologists today because they don't like that. As a matter of fact, one of the first things archaeologists do when they throw insults at me is say, oh, and Hancock takes drugs. So we don't need to listen to anything he says. It's still used as a smear. They just haven't caught up with how much the world has changed. Chavin de Huantar, dark underground galleries, very like at Eleusis. And in those galleries, you meet this figure, which is a snake-human combination. This is just an example of the areas. It was created as a setting for experiences in altered states of consciousness. And we know the substance they were using. They were using San Pedro because they depict it everywhere in their art. So without psychedelics, there's no Chavin de Huantar. It's central to that culture. This is the journey up through the Andes into Chavin. Here's Tiwanaku in Bolivia, 14,000 feet above sea level. Looking down at the Acapana Pyramid and the Calasasilla. And I know I'm looking at the wrong version of this talk, because somehow it's been put there instead of the right one, because Sartre's credit should be on all these pictures, and I put it there, but somehow the wrong version has been uploaded. This is the Ponch monolith in Tiwanaku. The ancient alien lobby suggests that he's holding some kind of high-tech ray guns. No, he's not. Manuel Torres has identified these as snuff trays and other paraphernalia for the consumption of the powdered seeds of Adenanthera colubrina, which contain the potent hallucinogen dimethyltryptamine, DMT. So central to Tiwanaku culture is the use of DMT. And it was central also at Caral, which is the oldest pyramid city in the world. Archaeologists used to argue that there could be no connection, however distant, between the New World pyramids and the Old World pyramids, because the Old World pyramids were far older. The pyramids of Egypt were 4,500 years old, and the New World pyramids were younger. Caral has blown that whole idea out of the water. Caral goes back to 2,700, 2,800 BC. It's older than the conventional date for the pyramids of Giza. And it turns out that they were, first of all, not in any way warlike. And secondly, that they were importing materials from all over South America, particularly hallucinogenic snuffs from the Amazon. The Nazca lines, gazing down on the Nazca Plateau from an airplane. Again, Santa, I'm sorry your credit's not there. They've uploaded the wrong version of the talk. Left, the Nazca spider, and right, greatly magnified, the subject of that image on the Nazca Plateau, Myrmecium spider from the Amazon. So the Nazca lines are pointing us towards the Amazon. They're suggesting a connection with the ancient Amazon. There's the monkey, the Nazca monkey, and what it is a spider monkey, again from the Amazon. The Amazon covers about 7 million square kilometers, and there's still, despite these horrific clearances, there's still about 5.5 million square kilometers of the Amazon left. And that's an area larger than the entire subcontinent of India, an area that has been lamentably under-investigated by scholarship. There's more than 100,000 different species of plants and trees in the Amazon. It's just an incredible home of biodiversity. And although it seems unlikely at first, there's evidence of an ancient practice of science in the Amazon. And that science is present in the ayahuasca brew itself. Remember, there's 100,000 different species of plants and trees. The two primary ingredients of ayahuasca, the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaves, which contain the dimethyltryptamine, if you consume either of these orally on its own, it will have no effect on you whatsoever. You have to mix them both together and cook them up in a pot in order to get the ayahuasca brew. And the mystery is, how was that? There's evidence of the use of ayahuasca going back more than 4,000 years in the Amazon. How was that done? Was it done by trial and error? How did they find the two plants to put together out of 100,000 different species of plants to produce this magical brew, ayahuasca? And ultimately it ends up in a glass or a plastic bottle, and we drink it, and even looking at it makes my stomach so. It's work, ayahuasca. It's hard work. I have to brace myself every time I go into it, but the lessons I learn are so important that I will continue with the journey. Curare, that's another mystery, 11 different ingredients, none of which are active on their own. Very difficult to understand how curare was created. It's now an element in Western anesthesia. How was this created? Jeremy Narby has commented on this problem. And again, I would say what we're looking at is science in the Amazon. And then the terra preta, the fact that the Amazon rainforest soils are not particularly fertile. That's one of the reasons why it's so stupid to cut down the Amazon rainforest and replace it with soybean farms, because those soybean farms won't even be functional for very long. But in the Amazon and across the Amazon, there are these areas where a most extraordinary man-made soil has been found, which is incredibly fertile. The oldest examples so far found are more than 8,000 years old, and they are still sought out in the Amazon today as fertile soils on which anything can be grown. They magically regenerate themselves. Francisco de Orellana accidentally traveled the entire length of the Amazon between 1541 and 1542. It started out in 1541 with a hunting expedition that he and about 20 of his colleagues were on in a couple of small boats. And they were intending to go back the same day, but the Amazon disagreed, and it started to carry them eastwards. And they made the whole journey through the Amazon until they ended up in the Atlantic Ocean and then went on to Mexico from there. On that journey, they reported seeing incredible arts and crafts, huge populations, large cities. All of this was rubbished and sneered at by archaeologists in later times. It was thought that it was just something that Francisco de Orellana had invented, had made up to make his journey look wonderful. But we're now discovering that he was telling the absolute truth, and that the ancient Amazon is a deeply mysterious place, and that it did once support populations of millions. Beginning to discover these lost garden cities, and busting the myth of a pristine Amazon. The Amazon is a human creation. Certain trees are hyper-dominant in the Amazon, and those trees are the ones that serve human needs. Humans have been interacting with the Amazon for thousands and thousands of years. And then we have this amazing mystery of the geoglyphs in the Amazon. Some of them are in plain view now because the area on which they stand has been cleared of rainforest. Some of them are still under rainforest, but they're being detected using LiDAR, which is a non-invasive way of seeing what's under the canopy. Here you have a square enclosing a circle, another square here. All these images are from the state of Acre in the southwestern Amazon. The geoglyphs frequently combine two shapes, again, a circle and a square. You see these little scallops out of the square here and a circle here. This enormous geoglyph at Tequino once extended over 37 acres. The two principal squares still remain, and again are manifesting geometry. Why does this theme of geometry keep on coming up? I want you to pay particular attention to this aspect of this image. I'll come back to it later. Fazenda Colorada in the Amazon. Interestingly, Severino Calazans has the same footprint as the Great Pyramid of Giza, and like the Great Pyramid, it's also perfectly oriented to true north. The ancient Egyptians believed that after death, we make a journey through a kind of parallel realm. They called it the Duat. It would not be correct to call it an underworld, because the Duat fundamentally manifested in the sky. The soul made a journey to the sky, and that's where the soul enters the Duat. And on that journey, we are tested and tried for everything that we've done with the gift of life. And fundamentally, although moral questions are important, as I showed in that judgment scene, fundamentally, it seems to me, having studied this matter for many years, that the real question is, did you get it? Did you get why you were in that human body? Did you understand what it was about? And these are images of the ancient Egyptian Duat and the geometry within the Duat. Now, here we have the Tucano, for whom ayahuasca is an extremely important medicine. Up on the left, we see a Tucano shaman guiding his son through an ayahuasca experience, helping him to navigate the infinite terrain of the other side. And in the foreground, we see ayahuasca art, again featuring geometry. And any member of the Tucano community can drink ayahuasca, but it's largely the shamans who negotiate the deeper mysteries and who negotiate with powerful supernaturals on behalf of their communities. And sometimes the shamans will gather together in a group to solve a particular problem. And consuming massive quantities of ayahuasca until they reach a point lying in their hammocks when they feel they are ascending to the Milky Way. Keep that Milky Way in mind. The ascent to the Milky Way isn't easily accomplished. An apprentice will hardly ever be able to rise immediately to this region, but rather will learn to do so after many trials. At first, he will barely rise over the horizon. The next time, perhaps he will reach a point corresponding to the position of the sun at 9 a.m., then at 10 a.m., and so on until at last, in a single soaring flight, he will reach the zenith. There's a journey to the skies indicated here. I'll just read this. In summary, the shaman's visionary journey through the ayahuasca portal involves a leap, or after sufficient practice, a soaring flight to the Milky Way. And beyond the Milky Way lies the entrance to the other world. And Reichel Dolmatov explains, it's said that the individual dies when he drinks the potion, and that now his spirit returns to the uterine regions of the beyond, only to be reborn there and to return to his ordinary existence when the trance is over. This then is conceived as an acceleration of time, an anticipation of death and rebirth. So in a way, ayahuasca is a kind of book of the dead. It's a guide to the afterlife realm, not written down in texts, but in direct experience. And I want to draw attention to that geoglyph that I showed you earlier. Here, what we're seeing is the entrance to the other world as depicted in Tucano art. And here in the geoglyph, we're seeing something very similar. The implication, there's much other research that supports this, is that the Amazonian geoglyphs were connected to the same complex of death and afterlife beliefs that flourished in ancient Egypt and in the ancient Mississippi Valley in North America. This is an extract from the pyramid text. Everybody's heard of the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, but the Book of the Dead is simply a later recension of what are called the pyramid texts. And the pyramid texts are inscribed primarily in the pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties at Saqqara. And this is the pyramid of Unas, and these are his pyramid texts. And that little symbol there, that star surrounded by a circle, is the duat. It represents the duat. It represents the portal through which one enters the afterlife realm. So the various examples of the ancient Egyptian texts that deal with the journey in the afterlife. And what the pyramid texts and the books of the dead achieve in hieroglyphs and imagery, I would suggest the pyramids of Giza are manifesting that in 3 dimensions. What we're showing here in Santa's photograph is a double exposure with the pyramid of Unas, with the pyramid text in the foreground, and the Great Pyramid and its neighbors in the background. So scholars agree that the god Osiris, who ruled over the afterlife kingdom of the Duat, his celestial image was seen as the constellation of Orion in the sky, which they called Sahu in ancient Egypt. And the Duat itself was envisaged as being located in the sky between the constellations of Orion and Leo, and with the great heavenly river of the Milky Way, which the ancient Egyptians called the winding waterway, running through it. Now, this is a depiction of the sky above Egypt, not today, not 4,500 years ago, the date that's given to the Great Pyramids, but around 12,000 years ago. The skies change because of the wobble on the Earth's axis, and that it's our viewing platform, so naturally the positions of the stars change. And what we have at this extraordinary moment, just as the constellation of Orion, Osiris, crosses the meridian with its pattern in the pattern of the 3 pyramids on the ground, so also the constellation of Leo is rising in line with the gaze of the Leonine Great Sphinx of Giza. And this is all the work of Robert Bauval, this investigation into the ancient skies depicted at Giza. How does the soul ascend to the Duat? Well, the answer is there given to us very clearly in the pyramids. There are narrow shafts cut through the walls of both the king's chamber and the queen's chamber in the Great Pyramid, and they point at the sky. And one of those shafts points directly to Orion's belt, not 12,000 years ago, but in the epoch when the pyramids were built. This is a book that Santha and I published in 1998. And I'm just going to read a few extracts. Very much like the ancient Egyptians, the peoples of ancient Central America located their netherworld in a region of the sky through which ran the Milky Way. And for the Maya, the Milky Way was a particularly important feature of the heavens. They conceived of it as the road that led to their netherworld, Xibalba, which in common with other Central American peoples, they located in the sky. Do you see a general theme arising here from the Tucano, the ancient Egyptians, the Maya now? The city of Utatlan, Guatemala, is designed according to the celestial scheme of Orion, exactly like the Great Pyramids of Giza. And Fernandez was able to prove all of Utatlan's major temples were oriented to the helical setting points of the stars in Orion. And he argued that the Milky Way, alongside which Orion stands, was thought of as a celestial path connecting the firmament's navel with the center of the underworld. Orion was extensively involved in Mayan rebirth beliefs, which described the constellation and specifically its three belt stars as the turtle of rebirth. In Egypt, as amongst the Maya, the stellar context involves Orion and the Milky Way. In Egypt, as in Mexico, a journey through the netherworld must be undertaken by the deceased. In Egypt, as in Mexico, religious teachings assert that life is our opportunity to prepare for this journey, an opportunity that should under no circumstances be missed. Let's move to North America now. This is Moundville in Alabama. Unfortunately, the amazing mound sites of North America have been massively damaged, and most of them have been completely destroyed, but some are left, and Moundville, a little bit of Moundville is left. What's interesting here, if we look at that screen, they're telling us themselves that Moundville, an excellent example of a powerful religious image, was the hand and the eye motif. The hand and the eye motif. Moundville's rattlesnake disc offers us the best known version. Stories passed down among various tribes tell of the dead entering the afterlife through an opening marked by a great warrior's hand in the sky. One account describes that hand as the constellation we know as Orion, with Orion's belt as the wrist. A faint cluster of stars in the center of the palm is a portal to the path of souls, or the path to the land of the dead. And as a group, here's the hand and eye symbol, and this is representing the constellation of Orion. The knotted serpents in the hand and eye are believed to be a representation of the night sky. The serpents are the ropes that join the earth to the sky. In the palm of the hand is the portal or doorway through which the spirits of the dead can ascend to the path of souls in the Milky Way in their extended journey to the realm of the dead. So the path of souls keeps on coming up again and again. The gateway or portal between the celestial realms and the earth disk was symbolized and artistically rendered as an open hand with an eye in its palm, the constellation of Orion. Once the portal was crossed, the souls of the dead began their journey by walking along a road or ribbon of light, the Milky Way. And this is an illustration of what's going on here. The belt stars are the wrist, and this is the portal through which one gains access to the afterlife realm. George Langford makes an important point here. He's an internationally recognized authority on Native American folklore and ethnohistory. And what he's telling us about that hand and eye symbol is that and this again is unfortunately, my colleagues here have uploaded the wrong version of my talk, and the rest of it would not be cut out if the right version of the talk were there. But the bottom line is that the soul reaches that portal in the sky by making a great leap up to the heavens. The word leap is emphasized at the optimum time. So ancient Egypt, the hieroglyph for the Duat netherworld, depicts a hole in the sky with a star at the center. In ancient Native America, according to George Langford, the hole in the sky is indicated as a slit being pulled apart, and the fact that it is celestial is frequently elaborated by the inclusion of a star, circle, or dot. So essentially the same image in ancient North America and in ancient Egypt. George Langford, again, he draws attention to a fearsome image on the afterlife journey in the Mississippi, an image of a brain smasher, usually a woman whose task is to destroy memory and humanity by removing or smashing the brain. There's repeated references to this menacing female figure called the brain smasher or the brain taker. Her role is the annihilation and permanent destruction of unworthy souls, the damned, on the afterlife journey. So it's interesting that we find a brain smasher in the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead as well. Wallace Budge offers no direct translation of this scene. He simply describes it as a goddess standing upright with her hand stretched out to the top of the head of a man who is kneeling before her and is cutting open his head with a hatchet. I asked Louise Ellis Barrett at the British Museum to give me a full translation of that scene. And what the translation is, she lives from the blood of the damned and from what those gods provide her, the demolishing one who cuts the damned to pieces. So essentially, it's the same idea as the brain smasher in North America. In the ancient Egyptian pyramid text, the soul on its journey through the Duat is confronted by a bird adversary, an ostrich in ancient Egypt. In Native America, that same encounter with a bird takes place, and it's regarded, we're told, do not travel on the Western waterways. Monstrous winged serpents in the ancient Egyptian netherworld, monstrous winged serpents of the ancient American netherworld. Here is what's called the underwater panther from Moundville, so similar to the Great Sphinx. Just even the way the tail curls around is very, very similar indeed. This is the chief of the astronomers amongst the Skidi Pawnee in North America. And in ancient Egypt, the chief of the astronomers wore a similarly scar-spangled robe, sometimes identified with leopard skin spots. This whelk shell shows an ancient Mississippian hero deity referred to by archaeologists as the Birdman and symbolized as a hawk. And right, we have the statue of the ancient Egyptian hero deity Horus, likewise symbolized as a hawk. And the fundamental role of both these hawk-headed deities was to represent the triumph of life over death. So both the ancient Egyptian and the ancient American afterlife journeys involve a strong element of judgment. Indeed, in a sense, the entire ordeal in both cases concerns the judgment of the soul for the choices made during this life. And in both cases, the unworthy soul can face annihilation by gods, demons, and monsters at any point on the journey, for example, at the hands of the brain smasher. But in both cases also, those who have progressed thus far through the netherworld, a specific judgment awaits, and we've already talked about that. And in both cases, the desired outcome was to leap up to immortal life amongst the stars. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think all these similarities from the ancient Amazon to ancient North America to ancient Mexico to ancient Egypt, all about the afterlife journey, I don't think that they can be simply dismissed as experiences. What these accounts speak to is experiences in deeply altered states of consciousness. And possibly, I think probably also to a remote common source that had massive expertise in navigating altered states of consciousness and that passed down this knowledge to future generations. That's why my vote goes to convergent experiences and a remote shared ancestor as being involved in this mystery. Now, I've just been told I've got 10 minutes to go, and that's good because I'm finished. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I know they're not going to kick me off the stage for another 10 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, I'm ready and willing to answer them.
Yes, just want to say thank you, Graham, for coming to Breaking Convention and fitting us in your very busy schedule. So we've got 10 minutes for questions. I'm just going to pass this mic down to our volunteer here. If you wave your hand, please keep the questions brief because there's a lot of you, and just wave down here. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
It's been many years waiting to meet you, so I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to hear you speak, first of all.
Thank you.
My name is Acacia Lewis.
Hi.
I was a student of Baba Kalindi Ease.
I'm slightly deaf, so you'll have to help me by speaking up a bit.
It's okay. I was a student of Kalindi Ease. I'll be speaking tomorrow, but I wanted to ask you what your opinion is on the Assyrian rites of the mushroom and the potential of the mushroom as being an originator for some of the 5.3 million year old hominids that crawled out of the trees. What is your opinion on
I'm not
that?
understanding your question.
My question is, what do you think of as a mushroom as being a potential resource for communication with that shared ancestor?
Yes, I think you're talking about communication with the past.
Not necessarily. I'm talking about communication with a hyper-intelligent being.
I personally have had many experiences of communicating with a hyper-intelligent being, and she often raps me firmly on the wrist. Yes, I think that's what's going on here. This is, for me, these experiences are a portal to another level of reality, to another realm. We're fixed in the illusion that this is all there is, and what these experiences teach us is that this is just part of something much, much, much larger than that. And we are here for a reason and for a purpose. And there are indeed hyper intelligent, caring, and healing entities who care what we do. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Graham. I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you think there's any links between the shift from a hunter-gatherer society to an agricultural society, or at least the shift from a nomadic lifestyle to a sedentary one.
Well, there's no doubt that the earliest evidence we have in art for the use of psychedelics is from hunter-gatherer cultures, and it's interesting as we shift into the so-called Neolithic, how things begin to change, and how you start getting this controlling mentality. You start getting the top and the controlling, powerful chieftains. Warfare begins. There's very little evidence of warfare in the Paleolithic, and a great deal of evidence of warfare in the Neolithic. And I think gradually these experiences got cut down because they threaten those in power, because they threaten those who claim to be the intermediaries between us and the divine. They allow us to have a direct experience of the divine. So I think in terms of the evolution of the human spirit, the shift out of hunter-gathering was not a good thing. Yeah.
Hi there. Thanks for your talk.
Thank you.
And also thanks for the work that you do. I think it's quite important.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that you don't believe that death is all there is, or that it's the end.
I don't believe that, but I can't prove that.
Sure. I guess my question is contemplation of an afterlife necessary to do good in this one? And if the actions that we take in this life are based on some belief of a judgment, either anticipation or fear, my intuition is that perhaps that introduces bad incentives for behavior.
You could be right. I can only tell you how it was and how it was expressed in the ancient world. What I come back to is the point I mentioned, that the ancient Egyptians, this was the focus of their civilization for 3,000 years. They were definitely using altered states of consciousness to explore the mystery of death. And they came to certain conclusions. And those conclusions are that we will be held to account for the life we've lived. We've been given the precious gift of life in a human body. The whole universe has given us this gift. And modern society today seems to be designed to minimize and trivialize that gift, and to make us focus on production and consumption and competition rather than on the perfection of the spirit. And I think the message is, you've been given an incredible gift. Be grateful for that gift and use it well in every way that you possibly can. And yes, if you don't use it well, there will be consequences. I can't say whether that's true or not. I can just say that that's how it was seen and understood by the ancient Egyptians and by many other cultures as well. There's a tendency in the modern world to just see this as all there is, and there's nothing else, and that focuses us on very negative things, like how much we own and how much we possess and how much richer we are or poorer we are than somebody else, and on buying consumer goods, when perhaps we should be using this opportunity of life to focus on other things as well. We can't get by without focusing on the laws of physics and the nature of this physical realm, but that probably isn't all we should be doing here.
Graham, I'm a big fan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really interested in your own journey and how ayahuasca has helped you formulate the theories that you have. And obviously in reductionist science and, the idea Graham Hancock's on drugs, it's a big sort of, controversy and all that. But I'd just be interested to hear from you as to kind of how you feel that ayahuasca has helped you formulate some of these theories, which obviously for people who haven't taken ayahuasca is a great leap to understand.
Yes.
And I suppose also another reflection on that is how in taking hallucinogenics and these very powerful medicines, you're actually being able to relate to some of the peoples who lived beforehand, which is obviously something that reductionist science just doesn't get.
It definitely doesn't get it. I first drank ayahuasca in 2003, and I did so initially for entirely practical reasons. I'm a boots on the ground researcher. If I'm going to research a subject, I have to immerse myself in it. That's why I did 7 years of scuba diving, looking for structures on the submerged continental shelves after the end of the Ice Age. And it was the same when I came to write my book, Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind, which was published in 2005. In order to write that book authentically and to explore the neuropsychological theory of cave art, it was essential for me to drink ayahuasca. I became aware that ayahuasca shamans were creating images from memory of their ayahuasca journeys, which were so similar to the imagery of the cave art, that it just became clear to me that I had to have that experience. So Santa and I went to the Amazon, and we had on that trip we had 11 journeys together in the Amazon, and I can say it was a life-transforming experience for me. But that's why I also add the caution that it's not a magic pill, and that we all often come out of an ayahuasca experience thinking our lives have been transformed, and very quickly we fall back into old patterns, as I have done again and again. But ayahuasca is there as a teacher. Something else. Ayahuasca showed me at the level of experience, not something that I read in a book, but something that I personally experienced, that we are part of this much vaster universe, that there are realms beyond this realm, that they are all interconnected in some way. I regarded myself as a complete atheist before my encounters with ayahuasca. And let's use the word atheism correctly, because that means simply without God. I didn't see any need for God, and actually I still don't. But what ayahuasca brought to me was a revelation, which I would call a spiritual revelation, that this physical realm is not all there is, that we are connected to something much larger, that we're here to learn and grow and to develop. Ayahuasca taught me that, and it showed it to me in direct experience. And in that level, it has changed my life completely. And it's also made me examine my own behavior much more closely than I did when I was a younger man. So I would say that ayahuasca has played a fundamental and formative role in my life since 2003, the last 20 years. And indeed has helped me to understand many things about ancient cultures that I didn't understand before. And I'm grateful to Mother Ayahuasca for these journeys. And I will not, I hope, leave this life before having some more journeys with Mother Ayahuasca. Thank you.